We talk about ions all the time in chemistry, but what actually is an ion? Well, in this video, we're going to learn about what an ion is and how we record them. So, let's begin. So, an ion is an atom or a group of atoms with an overall net charge. That is to say that if we looked at the charge of an atom or a group of atoms, there would be an overall charge that is not zero. Now, if we consider atoms for a moment, we know that they are made up of positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons. Often, atoms have the same number of protons as they have in electrons. So the charge between the two cancel each other out and there is no overall net charge. So let's consider this image of an oxygen atom for a moment. Now, how do we work out whether this atom is an ion? Well, we begin by counting the total number of protons. Now, oxygen always has 8 protons because its atomic number is 8. Now, if we count the number of electrons that are in my atom here, we'll know that the number of electrons is also 8. Now, these 8 positive protons give me a charge of +8, where these negative electrons give me a charge of -8. If I add these two charges together, it will equal 0. So my overall charge will be 0. Therefore, because I have no charge, this atom is considered to be neutral and is not an ion. However, sometimes atoms like oxygen can gain electrons. Oxygen in particular likes to gain 2 electrons, and usually does this by gaining them from another atom. So let's consider this diagram of oxygen where it's gained 2 more electrons. Let's start by counting the number of protons that it has. It still has 8 because that's what makes it oxygen. However, the number of electrons, if I count them in my diagram, has become 10 because it's gained 2 of them. So therefore, if we look at the charge, the protons will give a +8 charge, the electrons will give a -10 charge, and if we add +8 take 10, my overall charge becomes -2. Now, because this atom here has an overall charge that is not 0, we consider this to be an ion. More particularly, because the charge is negative, we call this ion an anion. Now, in chemistry, if I want to refer to this atom, I can write this atom as O2-. The 2- indicating the total overall charge of this atom. Where for the atom on the left that wasn't an ion, if I want to refer to this, I simply refer to it as O. And because there's no charge indicated, that means that there is no overall charge to this atom. So let me show you another example. So here we've got an example of potassium. If I begin by counting the number of protons in potassium, there are 19 of them. If I count the electrons here in my diagram of potassium, I'll also find that there are 19 of them. Now, to work out the overall charge, the number of protons, the 19, gives me a +19 in my charge. The number of electrons gives me a -19 in my charge. And overall, +19 subtract 19 will be 0, so my overall charge will be 0. Now, because my overall charge is 0, I have no charge, therefore I don't have an ion. However, potassium ions like to lose an electron, generally giving it to another atom. So here I've got an image of potassium that's given an electron to another atom. If I start by counting the number of protons this potassium atom has, it still has 19 of them. If I count the number of electrons in this diagram now, I've actually only got 18 of them. So when I go about counting my overall charge, the protons gives me a +19, the electrons gives me a -18, 19 take 18 will be +1, so my overall charge will be +1. So Therefore, this atom here is an ion. More specifically, it's got a positive charge. Now we call positively charged ions cations. Now in chemistry, if I want to refer to this ion here, I write this as K plus. Now this plus with no number next to it indicates it's got a +1 overall charge. Where if I want to refer to potassium, just the atom itself, I refer to this as just K. Now, because there's no overall charge indicated, it means this atom is neutral. So let's recap. So far, we've discovered that ions are an atom or a group of atoms that have an overall charge that is not zero. If an atom does have no overall charge, we do not consider this to be an ion, and we consider this to be a neutrally balanced atom. However, if it does have an overall charge, it can exist in two states. It can either have an overall negative charge, which we call an anion, or it can have an overall positive charge that we call a cation. Now, one way that we can try and remember these two particular words, I like to look specifically at the letters before ion. Now, in a cation here, it's got a T here. That T I like to think about as a plus sign. So what that tells me that a cation has an overall positive charge. In the word anion, it's the only one that has the N before ion. Now I like to think that that N stands for negative, and it helps tell me that anion has an overall negative charge.